Hey guys, I'm Amaroth and now we shall take a look at drawing our grass. So let's get to it. I have opened my island and as you can notice I have already started with building our little city. So I've created some cliffs, some rocks, I have drawn roads as well, I have created a part of coastline so we can see what it looks like now. And now we can move to grass. So the first thing we would do is making outlines of grass around our rocks and around our buildings like this, like here. Notice that there is this red chunk, which means that I can't paint there. I don't have place for my grass texture here. So here comes a little note I have forgotten before in roads tutorial, plan ahead. Because always you most of time you will have this dirt texture, you will have rock texture, then you can get road texture, and you are running out of textures. So try to plan ahead, and let's say that you want that you want to have a road coming like this. So in that case, try to avoid placing rocks in those chunks. Try to avoid having chunks where you have basically multiple, let's say, bonus things. Yeah, and what do I call bonus things? Well, rocks, roads, and textures from different environments. So sand, pebbles, snow, and so on. Try to avoid having more than two of such things on one chunk, even one can be enough. Having said that, let's go to grass texturation. If you have some chunks where you can't paint with grass, just make sure that you don't need to have grass there. So in this case, I think it's alright. I don't need to paint grass into this chunk. I have made it in that way that these pebbles are just here and it isn't, it isn't empty. So I don't have to use grass here. And let's get to painting. So what I will start with always is making outlines, as I have said. So I will want to draw outlines around my roads and around my buildings. Why am I not placing grass texture beneath buildings? Well, there's one quite simple reason. If we had a grass under this building, and then we would apply, let's say, ground effects on grass. So you would have some modeled 3D grass, some grass models from growing from grass texture. Well, they would be generated even under that building, which means that you will be able to see grass growing through that building floor. And we don't want that, obviously. So try to avoid having grass or any another texture which will have ground effects on it beneath buildings. Okay, that's why I am just drawing grass like this around building. Another thing is that when we go to 2D mode, you can see outlines of buildings here, and now they are visible on your minimap. Let's say that your minimap looks like, well, approximately like this in game. So you can see where are buildings on your minimap. And you can even draw those buildings in Photoshop there on your minimap later based on those outlines. That's another thing which this is useful for. So outlines around roads, outlines around rocks if you don't have them already. Just a quick and simple one. I could use some opacity here, but let's make it just quick. Okay, and now we will just move to drawing grass. In this case, it will be rather simple. You want to simply just draw it here, and we won't get any more fancy. There's a reason to it, mainly because we don't have any free textures here. And I just draw it like this, okay. I'm not done yet because I have those dirty spots here, and those dirty spots would prevent ground effects from appearing there, or they may prevent ground effects from appearing there, and I don't want that. I want ground effects here. So now when this is nicely done like this, I will go to my Raise Lower tool and I will raise terrain here, so it's risen. This isn't really because of that grass. I just want to avoid having a really flat areas, and I want the road to be kinda pushed down by people who are walking over it. So raise it a little bit. We want it smooth. We don't want any edges. We don't want any spikes or anything like that. So let's smooth it. And now my road is a little bit angled in direction I don't want it, probably somewhere. Well, at least here it is. So let's flatten it. Let's fix that. So our road is nice and you know straight, or that it's angled only by going up the hill, not sideways. And this is smoothed. Okay. Now we are done. And I would do something like this here everywhere in my little city here. And you might, for example, leave some places like this that we would make some sort of transition here, some sort of, dirt line like this to kind of separate two, let's say, hills of grass. To do this, I generally use the same techniques as for creating transitions between different environments. So I will use spray size to 188 or 65. That's my favorite. And that can be just enough, or you can lower your opacity and do this as well. You can do the same around roads, by the way. Of course, you can make transitions between grass and road a little bit more smooth to get rid of this sort of line here. You can use either, again, as always, you can either use spray or very small brush with radius under 1, let's say. Now you erase this one. I have left this dirty line here below, and now I'm done basically. And I would move on and create grass in my city everywhere. Well, I can't really be more fancy here because I don't have slots for textures. Let's say I would want to use those flowers, but I can't. As you can see, my texture slots are taken. This chunk has still one free space, but that's it. All those chunks are very out of textures because I have road and rock on the same chunk. So try to avoid having chunks when you have more than one, let's say, special element, either road, rock, or any another texture which is coming there from different environment. If you have some such chunks, try to keep only two textures there. Definitely you don't want to have three textures like here. Here we've got texture from different environment, rock and road at once. As now I'm really out of textures, I can't use anything else there, even basic grass. Well, what if we have space for this? I polish this out a little bit. So let's start drawing again. And now when I've got opened area, I don't have anything around I would need to worry about. I already prefer to start with normal brush. So let's get to pressure above 60 or even 70 maximum opacity, and let's just draw some sort of flakes. So a smaller one, a bigger one. Be careful to not make them too big. That might look a little bit lazy, but don't make them too small as well. And we go to helper models and we spawn a human. You can see how big this is. And actually human scale is your basically your best friend in Nugget. Keep track of having feeling how big player is, okay? When we place our human here on road, you can see how big this road is. Okay, so anyway, human scale, your best friend, guys. Keep using it. If you don't have a kind of sense of scale in Nuget just in your eye already, keep using human scale. I have noticed that I have a little bit messed up road here, so let's polish it. You in general need to keep fixing this all the time. So okay, moving back like here. So I have created some sort of flakes and now we will want to make some smooth transitions between them. I will again use spray and like always you don't really have to use spray, you can use small brush as well. So I will use a spray brush around every single flake here with just a partial opacity with 2/3 in this case. And now I have managed to paint at least some texture here on dirt and blur it a little bit, but that's not enough, at least yet. So moving on to full opacity, and we will blur these sharp lines here, which are still visible by using this spray. And now it's already getting close and it's alright. It already starts looking a little bit more natural. Okay, and when this is done, I will again rise my terrain. Like this to make it a little bit hilly so it isn't flat, because flat terrain always looks ugly. Don't have flat terrain. And another thing is that I want to have some reason for dirt to be here. It's the same as with rocks. You want to have reason why is different texture here and different texture here. So here is dirt because it is in lines which are pushed into terrain basically. Or you can place some moss here because there is a lot of water going here or something like that. Just try to have your map done in a way that it makes sense. Your map should make sense. That's basic thing here. And now you're done basically. But we can still make it a little bit more fancy. So let's use those flowers because we've got space for flowers here. So we will use spray now and start at 1/3 of opacity. And let's just scatter our flowers everywhere. Well, everywhere, don't place them on dirt, it really shouldn't be there. And notice that they aren't too harsh here. Well, why? The most important thing is that those flowers have background which has very similar color to my base texture. So when you compare those textures, they are rather similar. They have quite a similar hue of grass. This is just a little bit different. And then there are red flowers placed on that, but the background of this texture is still very similar. If I was using this texture, this would be much more harsh. By the way, this still has some sort of background behind it, but it can get a little bit more tricky if you use any texture which doesn't have this sort of background and which has, for example, completely different background. Those textures don't tend to blend into each other very well, and we want these textures to blend to each other, at least most of times. So that was 1/3, 2/3 now, and let's get a little bit smaller brush and let's focus more on tops of our hillies or on the centers of our flakes. Why? Well, maybe flowers are growing on spots where sun is more shining or whatever, so it looks a little bit more natural. And full opacity, again smaller brush, let's just make some small spots where flowers are literally everywhere. And that's it. So this is a little bit more fancy than just this, definitely. And by the way, you don't need to keep using dirt as bottom texture everywhere. You can swap it. Uh, Dirt in general works very well as a texture beneath a rock and beneath a road. It's super useful there. However, when you get to places where no rocks and no roads are, you might want to consider swapping dirt for grass simply. So let's do it here. Maybe I want to use this as destination. And you can definitely do this. Now we've got grass texture as our bottom texture, and we will use some sort of nice texture, flowers or moss or anything else, something special, and we will do something very similar. Let's just use spray now. Let's start on 1/3 and big brush, or quite big brush, some sort of very light flake, 2/3 smaller brush, another flake, or smaller flake, and full opposite a smaller brush, something like this. And now we can just erase this. So it again isn't flat. Try to avoid having flat terrain everywhere. And it still isn't, it isn't everything the same. You don't want to have just grass everywhere. So try to always have at least two textures blending into each other, literally or nearly everywhere. Let's expand this a little bit now to make it match that geometry a little bit more. And that's it. And I would continue with doing either this or this over my whole island. Now notice that I've got here two slots for textures, so I can place rock texture here, I can create some sort of rock here, or clay for anything, and I can use snow as well. So let's just do this. If I wanted to have this mountain snowy, I can do something like this. I can create a line of snow. Well, it doesn't really work out very well now, but we've got an idea. Okay, let's use some a little bit more reasonable snow. Let's use snow from Star Peaks. Here they are. And these sorts of wavy snows just don't work very well. And now I would make normal transition between environments by using spray. As you can see, this can be quite harsh, but you'll polish that, you'll fix that. No problem with that. One-third, two-thirds. And full. And you've got quite a smooth transition. Well, maybe I'm applying too big pressure. I've noticed it this right now. That's if you overdo it with pressure, you will get these sort of squares everywhere because of our texels. So let's remake it. My mistake. I've been wondering why is it getting so ugly. 2/3 and now full. Just to make it very quick. And here we've got snow and smooth transition into it. So we've got now three textures. We've got grass, nice grass, we've got snow, which is a texture from different environment, and we can still apply one more unique texture. So we can still apply road here, or we can apply rock texture here. So let's use rock. By the way, when we are creating snowy rocks or snowy mountains, it can be quite nice to just stay at, just part of opacity. I probably won't even apply full opacity here. Maybe I will, okay. Just on a few spots though, which are clean of snow. And that's it. Okay, so try to plan ahead with your textures, so you always have enough space for your textures, that you don't just run out of textures. Let's say that you would like to use those flowers everywhere. Well, you can't, because you don't have space for them here, because you have already taken that space by using two special things on one chunk, let's say. So that's pretty much it for me for now. This was grass and transitions between environments again, and I'm not sure what will be next, but still, I hope this was useful for you guys. Thanks for watching, and happy modding.